Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Atlanta, Georgia, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Sleeping Sunday. Usually it's guest day on Sunday, but today is Q&A day because I was traveling yesterday. Had an incredible program in Atlanta, Kaustubha. It was wonderful. I was like,
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm here with, they're doing so many great things in Atlanta, and I'm going to interview Veda Sar next week. He's my new man crush. I love this man. And
I love him.
I love him. I do love him. And he's just one of those guys who's like, he's just like a very bright, creative, organized person. And he's engaging it all in the service of Krishna.
I mean, very fascinating backstory.
The backstory's a major motion picture. The backstory is a major motion picture. We're going to get into it next week. When I tell the story, you won't even believe the story. That's how crazy the backstory. Don't miss next Sunday's show. But but this is the thing about Bhakti. You don't stop using all the gifts that you're born with. Sometimes people think meditation, spiritual life means I have to be a recluse. I have to move away from everybody. And I get it. People can drive you crazy and you want to sort of go into a cave sometimes. But we take our gifts and we give them back. And instead of using your intelligence, your ingenuity, your management ability, your charm, your charisma, your singing, your talent, whatever it is, instead of using it to endorse your ego, you use it to change the world. And I think that's like the ongoing thing that's like hitting me. Like, this stuff works. This stuff is transformatory. This whole sweet baby Krishna thing we joke about, we laugh about, it's so damn real. It's very, very real. And you watch it transform the lives. And I want to share, especially everybody who listens on Zoom, and especially the regular listeners, if what we're talking and reading every day in the Bhagavatam is touching your heart, the way to make this more effective in your life is to give it to other people. It's not ours to keep in a box. It's ours to give away. And all the great masters will be pleased. All the previous masters who've lived, you'll get those blessings by giving it away. And that was what I saw in Atlanta. They feed 700 people a day, prashad. We went and toured his 6,000 square foot kitchen, Mara. Can you imagine that? 6,000 square foot kitchen. Impeccably organized. They have groups of university students feeding everybody, doing it. You know the benefit you get from just giving sacred food to people? There's such a communion, feeding people. Then they have this incredible Govinda's restaurant. And then he's an incredible musician too. He just had a beautiful kirtan last night with a great group of people. I feel so high right now. And we're going back to Nashville today to Yogeshwari's home, and she's invited about 30 people to her home, and we're having a big kirtan tonight. I feel high. I feel spiritually high right now, Prabhu.
Okay, but what you're drinking is authorized.
Yeah, I'm
nothing funny in there, right?
No, it's not. I'm not. This is
okay.
Chai. This is a
Okay,
herbal chai made by the dust of Braj.
Great.
Everything good on the home front?
Everything's good. I just want to, as we enter into our announcements, I just wanted to reiterate that today at 11:30 Eastern Time is that Urban Davy, which is that ladies sangha.
All right.
That today it's featuring Shama Sangita Devi Dasi and its ultimate life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita. And if you want to join that, ladies, you can go to the Bhakti Center's website and go to their, in the menu, go to like the online programs and you'll see Urban Davy there. And it'll give you the link that you need. It's free of cost.
Wow. That sounds great.
Sangha for ladies.
All right. Mara, you better go. Mara.
Okay. We have some other announcements too, actually.
I want to know if you're going, Mara.
Maybe.
Doesn't sound committed, Kaustubha. She doesn't sound committed.
I guess she doesn't need those life hacks, huh?
I guess she's got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Mara.
There's also a Bhakti Recovery Group meeting at 9:30 today. And
Are you going to that?
Yep. And Seth Lieberman's offering his Harmonium meetup group at noon.
I think that would
and
be
you'll be there too.
Mara.
I'll be everywhere.
Okay.
We're just trying to help you, Mara.
I know. I appreciate it. There's also no show tomorrow, right? Because Raghu's going to be traveling.
I'm traveling.
I didn't know that.
Surprise.
Because Thursday I got an appointment. We got to talk. We're missing too many days.
Let's have we
gotta regroup here.
We're gonna regroup. Okay. Well, what do you say we dive in? If you're listening to this on Facebook, welcome. This is our daily yoga philosophy podcast. We're not going to teach you about up dog and how to do down dog properly. We're teaching you about the thinking process of spiritual life according to Vedic texts, where our intelligence should go, where our thoughts should go, where our mind should go. How do we treat people? How do we treat ourselves? And how do we have success applying Vedic wisdom to a contemporary world? And it's quite magical. This stuff really works. And so we do this every day. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, Wisdom of the Sages, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wisdom of the Sages, and follow us, subscribe, hit the bell icon, etc.
Okay.
Are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. I got a question for you.
Hit me, brother.
It's coming from Adrian, who is an other from San Diego.
Ooh.
Adrian writes, "Hello, Kaustubha, Raghunath, and Mara. You are all simply great, and I appreciate your dedication to this show and your practice." Thank you, Adrian.
Sweet.
My question today is about knowing when to quit. Okay, that's kind of an interesting general question and a little wisdom in life. So you see, how does one know if a situation is a lesson from Krishna, or if the lesson is to get out of the situation? I've heard it said on the show that Krishna gives you what you need, and he has a way of dictating your actions. I've also heard it said that we really don't have control over our life's path because of our past lives. So I'm a little confused. Do I take charge or let go? Will I still end up at the same place no matter what I do? Does this have more to do with surrounding myself with reliable confidants who can help guide me? Thank you. Interesting question.
Good question, huh?
Do you take the bull by the horns, proverbially, or do you let go? When do you do which?
You pet the bull and feed him grass.
Okay.
Okay. Two things popped into my mind. One is, this is our Bhakti Recovery Group. Dear Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Powerful prayer, isn't it? Powerful prayer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I like to act as if I'm in control, but deeply understand that I'm not in control. I don't want to be lazy and just say, well, it's all fate, because our personal endeavor does have something to do with our result. But at the same time, we are constrained by other factors: time, place, circumstance, karma, etc. So our endeavor is something. But what it really boils down to, and you think, well, maybe I can change this miserable situation. Maybe you can't change the miserable situation, but you can change how you react to the miserable situation. I'm witnessing our good friend and Zoomer, Gopal Chandra, go through a material miserable situation. He's leaving his body. And he's a young man with little kids. And he's somehow becoming a transcendentalist. From this same very this just being with him is giving me more faith in this practice than anything I've ever done. Watching his consciousness change. If you were to say, and sometimes people will come over to his house and they'll be like from high school or something, and they'll be crying, they'll be sad, they'll be upset, and he's singing in bliss. This is incredibly powerful. Why are we happy in a miserable situation? It's because we're adding Krishna to the situation. So we might have some incredible impact. If you look at it on paper, what good karma this guy has. He's famous, he's wealthy, people appreciate him. And let's face it, we know famous, wealthy people who get a lot of validation that commit suicide, that are incredibly depressed. So it's really got nothing to do with our economic position, our public validation. It's got to do with, can we apply bhakti in any situation? So yes, our personal endeavor, sometimes we have to get out of a sour relationship. Sometimes we have to get out of a sour career. Sometimes we have to move forward. And then sometimes we try to get out of those things and we're just trapped for some freak of fate. But whatever I do, if I can apply Krishna to it, it's got nothing to do now with my karma. Now I'm on a whole different level. Whatever I've got, now it's going to be transcendental. And you add Krishna, you add spiritual life to wherever you're at, and your whole world's going to change. And your whole world is going to be glorious. And everybody in your universe is going to be benefited by your deep centered focus. How's that, Kaustubha?
Lovely, Raghunath. Thank you for that.
You're lovely. That's why you see it as lovely.
Yeah. It's kind of that serenity prayer is kind of like, it's a prayer to be able to understand exactly what Adrian is asking. So in other words, it's not one of those things that you can just, well, here's the formula, but it's something that requires prayer, it requires introspection, it requires, and as he mentions, surrounding yourself with reliable confidants that can help guide you. But some things in life we have to actively work to change, and some things we just have to let go of and accept them as they are.
All right. Are you ready for a question?
I'm ready.
Who is this from?
Rennie Jacob.
Rennie Jacob. Okay. Hare Krishna. Dear Wisdom in the Sages community from the other land. Thank you for being my daily inspiration, best friend, and guide. Oh, that was sweet. Words aren't enough to express just how grateful I feel for all of you. Thank you deeply for what you do. It's helping transform me a little every day. That's a very beautiful sentiment. Thank you. Since Good Friday is here and Easter celebrations are coming upon soon, my question relates. We're a little late, yes. Yeah. My question relates to the essential focus and meditation of this time, Jesus Christ's magnanimous sacrifice on the cross. I grew up in the Christian tradition before I came to Bhakti, and during my days within the faith, I've spent time studying biblical literature and hearing from Christian wisdom teachers and elders. Based on what I've read and heard, Jesus' sacrifice is commonly explained as having been made to save us from our sins. I wanted to understand this more deeply. How can we understand and appreciate Christ's sacrifice from a bhakti perspective? How do we understand the mood and intention behind what Jesus did? What does saving us from our sins actually mean from a bhakti viewpoint? Apologies if the question is too broad to cover. I was hoping that you could shed a little light to help us reflect and appreciate this Easter time a little bit more deeply. Well, you can next Easter because we missed this one. Thank you so much for taking the time. Rennie.
Okay, thank you for the question, Rennie. And yeah, it is a very good question. It's an important question. Now, Rennie asks, how can we understand and appreciate Christ's sacrifice from a bhakti perspective? And what I'll share is how I, like personally how I do. And, Rennie can take from that what she wants. And let me begin here. That both Raghunath and I grew up Catholic, and had some, I guess training. There's some exposure. Might be a better word. To Christian thought, Catholic theology, and Catholic thought. And the question here is, it has to do with how you take Christ's entire life and teachings, and then you have this crucifixion of Christ, and what does it mean, and how are we meant to understand it? I assume, that amongst the different denominations of Christianity, there's a lot of similarity in how they understand the crucifixion, and then there's probably some differences too in how they understand it or interpret it. But it's based off the Bible. The way that I look at Christianity, coming from my Krishna Bhakti perspective, is that first you have Jesus, the character of Jesus, and what he taught. And I have faith in Jesus himself, and I have faith in what he taught. And then you have that, and then you have what ends up in the book that's called the Bible. Now, my faith in that text is not quite the same as my faith in Jesus, right? Because his teachings are now coming through, they're being filtered through, a particular church, putting together that book. And then there's what the church teaches and how they interpret that book too. If I were to walk into any church of any different denomination and hear what they're teaching about the crucifixion of Christ, I don't know. I don't have complete faith in that it's necessarily they're presenting exactly what Jesus taught or what he emphasized. So when I look at the crucifixion, I'm not looking at it as a way of, Rini mentioned from a Christian viewpoint, or she wrote that, how do we understand the mood and intention behind what Jesus did? What does saving us from our sins mean from a Bhakti viewpoint? And from what I've seen and what I've been taught and heard, commonly from a Christian viewpoint, saving us from our sins means that Jesus died on that cross to save all of us from eternal damnation. And in other words, we're born sinful. Jesus takes on, he pays the price for our sin. And what we need to do is have faith in him, and then we're saved from the results of that sin, which is eternal damnation. That, to me personally, it feels to me like when I hear Jesus speaking, so much of his teachings through the Bible, it rings true. But when I hear this, it doesn't ring true to me at all. And I find it inconsistent with what I find in the teachings of the Vedic literature. I find most of what Jesus is teaching, I found very consistent. But I find this idea that we're born sinful, we're sinful by nature, Jesus pays the price for our sin, we have faith in him, and therefore it really doesn't matter how we lived, as long as that faith was there, that we're saved from eternal damnation. I have a hard time swallowing that. Now, from a Vedantic point of view, if we talk about like being saved from sin or from bad karma, we can think of it more as like we're being saved from the cycle of birth and death, right, from samsara. And that happens, it involves grace. Like this idea that Jesus dies on the cross, we just have faith and we're saved by his grace. It's almost like it's entirely grace. Commonly, the way that it's presented, right? Commonly, Christianity is taught like we are all sinful and there's nothing we can do about it. And even your works are nothing. They mean nothing, right? Really, it's all about just accepting that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. To me, that really feels like somehow some of the meaning got lost or changed there, because what I see Jesus doing is he's encouraging us to transform ourselves, right? Or let's say there's a combination, right? There is faith and there is grace, but that grace is received by those who live as he taught, right? Who embrace the idea that I need to transform my actions, my words, my thoughts. Actively, I play a role in that, and I see Jesus just constantly encouraging us to play a role in that, right? So I thought I would read just a little bit these are just some of the instructions from Jesus, right? And I'm taking them just from.
I like
You like
this.
that?
We're doing this on Sunday. Good.
We're doing this is our little sermon today.
Our
We're
little
reading from Matthew.
Read from
Everything-
Matthew.
I'm going to
One of my
read
favorite.
just a group of quotes that are all just coming from the book of Matthew, from the New Testament. Now, when I read these and I hear them, they sound entirely consistent with the kind of teachings that a yogi is encouraged to take up. You actively try to improve your character, improve your thoughts, improve your words, improve your actions, so that you can more deeply meditate on God. And so here are some quotes from Matthew. Jesus said unto them, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second commandment is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the laws and the prophets. Right.
I like it. That's it. That's Bhakti Yoga.
That's entirely consistent with Bhakti-yogi. Now here's another one. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil of the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? So in other words, see the good and feel, to me, this is just so consistent with the idea that like the idea of transcendental knowledge as is presented in Vedic literature, right? Underneath every living being, underneath their body, underneath their mind, beyond their actions or their current mindset is a pure spirit soul that's loved by God. So Jesus is saying, love them, even your so-called enemies, pray for them who persecute you, right? Even the tax collector, like even the most materialistic people, have affection for those that are kind to them. But what I'm asking you as a yogi to do is to have no enemies in this world, right? To feel no animosity towards every living being. Okay, more from Matthew. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others or to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward for your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received the reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And so, again, it's this humility, right? Again, very consistent, do good and don't try to be, don't do it with the wrong motive. Do it with an entirely pure motive, Matthew continues, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where the thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Right? So invest your time and your energy and your affection and your heart in that which is spiritual, which is transcendental, which is beyond the influence of time. Another one, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. That's karma, right? You're always judging others, and you're going to be judged yourself. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own, right? Stop judging others. Look to yourself. Transform yourself. Another one. Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. I think he actually, or others translate like 70 times, 7 times.
Right.
So in other words, be not just be forgiving, be radically forgiving.
Radically forgiving. And if you want to hate, wait till 78 times. Then hate.
That's right.
And 78, that's when I get real resentful.
Stop forgiving at that point.
Yeah.
And then finally, so in everything, do unto others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets, right? So like, he's giving instructions how to live with the mindset of a yogi, right? Forgiving, tolerant, kind, loving, unconcerned with material things, concerned with the spiritual aspect of life. This is what I see Jesus teaching. Now, I don't see him just teaching like, just live it anyway. You're a sinner, so just accept that I'm going to die on the cross for you, and then your sins are forgiven. I see constantly he's teaching one as a yogi, as a guru teaches a disciple, right? He's teaching about self-transformation. He's teaching about the mindset of the yogi. And this is how I understand the value of what he gave. And when I hear descriptions of, you're born sinful, there's nothing you can do about it, but Jesus is paying the price for you, just accept it. It sounds, when I hear that interpretation of Jesus' death, I'm not saying that the Jesus' death on the cross wasn't profound. Like, for instance, in the Bhakti tradition, we have like Haridas Thakur, right? Who was like similarly, the government institution threatened by the depth of his spirituality, tortured and killed him. Right? At least they thought they killed him. They beat him. They took him to 21 marketplaces. He was whipped and beaten in all the different marketplaces, and ultimately he was meant to be killed. And when when the those that were beating him, were trying, they couldn't kill him.
They couldn't kill him. He was laughing.
He was just like, oh, I get it. They're like, if we don't kill you, we're going to be killed, And he's like, oh, then, okay, then I'll die. And he just kind of like mystically kind of like
stopped his heart
died.
from beating. Yes.
Yeah, like a yogi. And then he threw him in the river and so on. But when I see that, it was never taught that Haridas Thakur died for my sins, but rather I meant to learn through his example how he was forgiving even though he was being tortured, how his faith was so deep. His connection with God was so deep that nothing of the material world could alter that in any way, or alter his saintliness in any way, or alter his love for others in any way. That's what I meant to learn from that. It's not a ticket to salvation. So we've discussed a little bit in the past, like religiosity. We talk about the difference between spirituality and religiosity. Religiosity, if we want to, of course, it's all semantics, but if we want to interpret it this way, religiosity can mean I'm concerned with my salvation, right? And so this concept, Jesus died for my salvation. I just had to have faith and I get that salvation. I'm not concerned with transforming myself so much. To me, we call that religiosity. And that's a problematic kind of attitude. Whereas spirituality means I'm concerned with self-transformation, not salvation exactly, but self-transformation. I'm dissatisfied with the quality of my thoughts, with the quality of my words, with the qualities of my action. I know they can be improved. I feel I'm being controlled by my mind and senses. I want to take control and elevate my consciousness. I play an active role in that. Grace is definitely part of that. God's grace is an extremely important part of that. But I qualify myself to receive that grace.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Through how I live, through how I speak, through how I think. So that's, in any case, those are my thoughts on, I'm not a scholar of Christianity, and
you're not a Christian theologian.
I am not, but I know
you would have been a great priest, Prabhu. I think so.
I don't think so.
I think so.
But and I'm sure there are others that could come and really speak far more to Christ's crucifixion in depth and what it means and how it can be understood. But I don't buy into the idea that he died for our sins. We just have faith and we're saved. That's, to me, it doesn't ring true.
Prabhu, that was a beautiful, detailed answer. People ask that question to me. I always give a simple answer, like, the guru gives you direction, but you have to follow that direction. For him to take on your karma, so to speak, take your sins. Christ died for my sins. He's giving us instruction to direct us. It's just like if I've been driving on the wrong side of the street and wrecking my car and other people's cars, and then somebody comes along and says, no, man, you just got to drive on the right. One, that person's my savior. He saved me from a hellish condition. And two, now I'm following his direction and sins are over, so to speak. I have some residue because I've got insurance I've got to deal with from people cars I've wrecked, and I've got bills and expenses. But now I'm on a new path. So I get it. We do need that direction from Guru, from Christ, but we also need to follow Christ. It's simple math. I just believe and then I'm changed. No, big deal. Belief is impractical. You got to put belief to work. I can't just get a gym membership and now I'm fit. No, I got to go to the gym. I got to apply what I'm learning.
Do you have to fix everything around here?
Do I have to fix all the problems of this world?
I know that Prabhupada would sometimes say, like, okay, well, if he died for your sins, then why do you keep sinning? Do you want him to come and have to die for you again?
Yeah, that's a good one.
But I like your analogy too. In other words, okay, if I'm causing all this destruction, because I'm the crazy way I'm driving, I actually need to follow what he's teaching. And perhaps, like one way to just understand that crucifixion is just, in one sense, it's like the ultimate demonstration of his yoginess, like of his yoga mastery. And when I say that, I mean not only mystically, like coming back, but also just in his tolerance and his forgiveness, and ultimately his love. The depth of his love is shown in most graphically through his crucifixion. Maybe that's
which reminds me of, how deep is your love? Your love, how deep is your love? That's a good song. I take these mundane songs and I Krishnaize them. I can listen to mundane music all day long and just put a spiritual twist on them, and I'm in bliss.
Okay.
Think about that one, Mara. How deep is your love?
It's a good one.
Song. It's a good song.
It's a good one for
Don't humor me, Mara. Okay.
All right, I got a question for both of us.
Hit me.
This is coming from our old friend, Harshal Gore from the UK.
Harshal Gore. He might have the
Londoner.
most questions than anybody.
Yeah, we're coming back to Harshal.
Yeah.
Harshal is great. I met Harshal at the Bhakti-yogi Manor. And I met his whole family. Very sweet people.
The Gore family?
The Gore family, yeah. It's great to meet like an Indian guy with a great Cockney accent,
It's always good to meet them. For an American, we love that.
He was really sweet, and his whole family was really nice. So here's what he says. He says, I've been recently reading, he said, okay, he wrote, actually, here he goes. He said, it was amazing to briefly see Kaustubha in person at the manor. Real life is much better than Zoom. He says, my question for Q&A today is, I've been recently reading the Book of Dharma by Simon Haas. Yeah, when we had Simon Haas on the show, we spoke about his book, the Book of Dharma. One chapter in the book talks about unintelligent design, quote unquote, right? It discusses all the design faults in humans. One section is titled, Losing Ourselves in the Endless Search for Worldly Worth. Interesting, right? It's a habit we have. Simon discusses our need for external validation to increase our self-esteem, and specifically mentions the human need for acceptance, approval, appreciation, and applause. This hit me hard. I tell myself every day that I don't suffer from these emotions and fear of missing out, FOMO. But to be honest, I'm lying to myself. I need these things and more. I still get upset if I'm not considered, included, or invited. Even more ridiculous, I suffer from this with Krishna consciousness, for example, not being invited to sanghas or kirtans. So my question to both of you, what can we really do to stop the mind from FOMO and these self-esteem issues? Are there any life hacks you use or bhakti tricks to find contentment? I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Why don't you start with that?
I'm a bhakti magician with lots of bhakti tricks, Harshal.
You got hacks?
I got hacks. I got tricks. This is a great question. I like to just analyze this stuff and just think deep. And I like to make statements like we do at the end of the show, takeaways, and like keep them with me. And one big one that I've said on the show millions of times, and I say, you know what I'm going to say, Mara? No, okay. thought you were a little bit more in tune with me, Mara.
Glad you're here with us.
Thought you were with us. She's dreaming of cooking stuff. What people think of me
It's none of my business.
is none of my business. What I think of
It's none of your
myself,
business.
that's my business. What I think of myself, that's my business. People think of me, none of my business. What I think of myself, that's my business. And here's another one I say a lot, which I think there is no amount of public validation that will make me feel whole. There is no amount of public validation that will, and we see this all the time. We see people who get the most validation. Are they whole? Are they grounded? No, not necessarily. Sometimes they're the least grounded people. So I think if you really analyze how the ego works, the ego wants to be praised by everyone. But the problem with that is, suppose I do have that karma where I get tons of praise, tons of validation, tons of external love. We generally can go deeper and deeper in illusion. I can say that personally, because being in the old days of being in a band, before I met devotees and before I had any spiritual information, I was a pretty good guy. I was straight edge. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I was vegetarian. Those are good things. But to deal with that ego that goes with the living entity in a public situation, when you're on a stage, you're getting so much validation, much more than most people get in a lifetime, to have hundreds of people singing your songs on stage. It's such a high, I can't even describe it until you get off the stage. Now, generally, in a situation like mine, say, now I'm not in the public eye, it's backstage, and here's the deal. Sometimes people medicate that downturn. There's a downturn after you get off the stage that can bring you very low because you're getting no validation. So we medicate it with drugs or alcohol or sex or something. But I didn't do that stuff. So all I got stuck was the emotion, which was an emptiness. And so there's huge swings up and down when you get a lot of validation. And you have to really start, and I tell you, the philosophy of bhakti and the things we're talking about saved me from that. And the whole Gita is, how can I just show up and do what I'm born to do, whether the whole world thinks I'm crazy, whether the world doesn't validate me, whether the world thinks, I'm an outcast, I'm a weirdo, I'm a freak, or they're patting me on the back. I'm not doing it for them, and I'm not doing it for their praise, and I don't give a crap if they don't like what I'm doing. I'm doing it because this is what Krishna wants. And if I don't get invited to the party, that's okay. I'll make my own Krishna conscious party. There has to be a little detachment, Kaustubha, right, from what other people think of me. What do you think?
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of a nugget we once spoke on quite some time ago.
Tell me.
It was from Francois de la Rochefoucauld.
What?
Do you remember this one?
I don't.
From Francois?
No, I don't
This
remember
was
Francois.
an episode from episode 361, Refining Our Desires. But there we quoted Francois as saying, before we set our hearts too much upon anything, let us examine how happy they are who already possess it.
Ooh, say that again. Read that again.
Before we set our hearts too much upon anything, let us examine how happy they are who already possess it. And it's a good quote. And so, yeah, like all the validation or inclusion or whatever, it's not the ticket to happiness necessarily. And so, but I believe, we can speak to what Harshal's bringing up on two levels, right? Raghunath's been speaking to it from, let's say, the more transcendental level. Like ultimately our happiness is not dependent on anything or any outside person's validation or anything like that. And we need to hear that, that, and it's really important. I think whatever, suffering, Harshal, whatever, you've been going through, whatever pain you've been feeling because of this, that's also a God-given kind of thing, right? Whatever kind of, maybe loneliness or whatever it might be, that in one sense, that's a call, that's a stimulus for turning within. And when I say within, I mean towards God within, right? That there actually always is a companion that's there with you, that understands your suffering, that a genuine, real relationship can be not just an imaginary friend,
Right.
but a genuine relationship is actually there, and for most of us, it's gonna take some suffering for us to act. When we're not suffering, we just ignore it because we feel like I got everything I need right here. When we're missing what we feel we need right here, we might be inspired to turn to it. If we've been hearing, then we might be inspired to turn to it. So cultivate that inner relationship for real. And you will begin more and more. It takes time. Nothing's, immediate like that, but you will feel more and more that, oh, I really don't need anything else. Sometimes, I'm just happy to be alone. So there's that, and that's where we're headed, and that's the ideal, and that's what we're moving towards. Not necessarily isolation, but the freedom from the need for any external validation. But beyond that, there is the practical thing that like I wish I would have saved it. I saw an interesting quote from Srila Prabhupada just the other day. Someone posted, but it was Prabhupada talking about marriage.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of, it wasn't in the mood that you would most commonly hear him, but it was kind of like, it was kind of informal. It was probably just taken from some conversation he had. And it was kind of like, well, everyone needs to be happy. And still get married and be happy. It's kind of like that. Like, we all need a little love in our life. It was kind of like that. We need a little affection. We need a little closeness. Everyone needs a hug. Something. He didn't say all those things, but he was saying, in other words, what he was saying was, although we're aiming for this high spiritual level of thought, as we're in the state of practice, we need some mental stability, and that requires a little bit of happiness in life, and so there are ways that we can pursue external happiness in a dharmic way, so that we can deepen and deepen and deepen that inner realization. And part of that is our social network, right? Our friends in our society, and a feeling of friendship and warmth that's there. And so I don't want to just tell Harshal, hey, go deeper spiritually, because to practice the spirituality, we need that. And I'd imagine a lot of things can be said on this level. Maybe Raghunath can share it on this level too. But just for now, I'll just say that what I find, sometimes people turn to me because whether like I play a certain role in the Bhakti Center or I've been around a while or whatever, and they share a similar kind of thing, like, I wasn't invited to this, and I can see the hurt, and they want to enter more into, in any society. It was funny. Just the other day, I was riding down, I was riding a bike.
Were you wearing a helmet?
No.
See? He doesn't wear a helmet.
But I was riding my bike down the street, and I'm riding on Prince Street, through Soho, and I'm riding on the side of the road, and because the traffic was kind of slow there, a car pulls up right next to me, and it's a convertible, right? It's a white Mustang convertible.
I love those.
And so we're kind of like right on the same level, like I'm in the bike and they're in the car, and I turn around, and it's Ananta Govinda driving that thing.
What?
Yeah. It was Ananta Govinda and Champak, the Russian Champak, sitting in the passenger seat.
Oh,
and I'm looking down, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? Ananta's cruising around like he's in Miami Vice or something here, looking all smooth. We're so happy to see each other, and then we pulled over and we spoke for at least an hour. We just hung out and just spoke on the side of the road for an hour, and we had a great time.
Oh, you posted that picture. I
posted a picture of us. Yeah. And so, but part of the discussion revolved around, at one point, Ananta said sometimes people come to him. Now, Ananta, first of all, he may be the world's greatest kirtan leader, right?
I'll second that.
Yeah, he's just, his kirtan is just absolutely out of this world. Beautiful,
he's like the LL Cool J of the Hare Krishna movie.
Well, when I saw him cruising off in that Mustang, I was like, yeah, definitely. And he is the smoothest guy. He's sitting there because he's a photographer too, and like because in Soho, like there's all these models walking around and everything.
He's like just a beautiful man.
Yeah, full of just a beautiful type of charisma he has. And like, some model comes walking down the street, like she knows him and, she starts talking, it's he's definitely the smoothest guy. So anyway, so he's got a beautiful, his entire family is devoted, they were raised in the Brooklyn Temple, right? His family. And even I think it's almost like in Roots where like, they'd lift the baby up and they offer like, when they were babies, they were offered to Govinda, to Radha Govinda, like as children, as infants, they were offered like, dear Lord, please accept, my daughter, my son, as yours. And they've lived their entire lives as the servants and the lovers of Sri Radha Govinda in the Brooklyn Temple. So not only is he an incredible kirtan leader, the entire family, his sister Chuta, and now their nephews, everyone's coming up, and they're just incredible, and they also pull in others, that also just get into kirtan. And when I say they're into kirtan, like for instance, like when they come to the Bhakti, any Thursday night, you can hear them. They're there pretty much like every Thursday night kirtan now at the Bhakti Center, and they'll chant. That kirtan goes from 7 till 9. But when 9 o'clock comes around and everyone else is getting up and taking prasad, eating, they just keep going.
It's a late night kirtan party.
They just keep going, and they'll go till 10, 11. I don't know if they're going that late now, but I used to bring them to the Broome Street Temple. They would go to midnight, 1 o'clock, just keep going and going and going. They have a taste. Yeah. And so in any case, Ananta said to me, sometimes people come up to me and they say like, oh, the kirtan scene's so cliquish. It's like, I can't be part of that. And he's like, people say that, or he hears that from other people. He's like, no, I want everyone. Like, so in our mind, we think I'm not part of that group. Sometimes you just have to break through a little bit and say, hey, just walk up to that person, because the devotees, they're soft-hearted,
Yeah.
And just say, hey, I wish I could be more part of this.
Is that possible? Don't be offended. Don't be offended. Take no offense.
Exactly, right.
Move
we
forward.
all are on our mental platforms.
Yeah. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like me. I got news for you, Harshal. I love you. When I see you, Harshal, I'm going to hug you. I'm going to kiss you on your cheeks 3 times. Kiss on the left, kiss on the right, kiss on the left again. That's what you're going to get from me. You are welcome in my life. And let's not live in our mind. Does he like me? Does she not like me? Just act in a way where you like yourself and step forward.
And even in that humility.
It's their problem.
Yeah, with humility, like devotees appreciate it too. Say, hey, Prabhu, there's this program that you were part of that you did, and I would have loved to have been invited to that. Would you do me that favor and invite me the next time you do something like that? Because I really want your association. You come to a devotee like that, come to Vaishnava, it's gonna melt their heart. Don't be afraid to. Right.
I like your point you're making, because even Linda says, I felt the same. She's writing this on the message board. I felt the same way when I first started joining the Zoomers, but quickly realized that it was all in my head.
There you go.
I think all these people on Zoom don't like me because I'm new. I got news for you. We love Linda. She's like a regular here. And when we meet her in person, you'll love her more. Everybody's welcome here. Come on.
There you go. So I hope that'll be helpful, Harshal. We all do love you, Harshal. Okay, let's see if we can get another question. You ready, Raghu?
Yep.
It's coming from Jerry, who's a Texas other.
A Texas other.
Texas other. He
If you're
says, hi, y'all.
new to the show, others are those who are not on Zoom. They're out there listening to the podcast, and we have no idea that they're out there. And I met a whole bunch yesterday, Stu. A whole bunch of others came to the event.
I bet you did. Well, here's from Jerry, the Texas other. He writes, hey, y'all. It's Jerry, the farmer. The Texas other, back again. I'll try to, it's almost like a...
I come already.
It's almost like the opening of some kind of country music thing or something, like he's like a narrator or something like that, or a narrator or some kind of...
DJ.
In any case, he says, I'll try to make the backstory brief. My wife and I are in the middle of a move closer back to where we used to live. So in this between period, we moved in with my mother. Okay, that's where it all starts, right? As you may assume, this ain't working out. This ain't working out.
Ain't working out.
The sunshine went away about a week in. The lasting beef is between my wife and my mother, and I'm stuck in the middle. So just some framework. My parents didn't raise me, and basically weren't in my life for the most part. Okay. There's a gap in communication between the two of them, and I can tell my mother wants to fix this situation, but my wife and I, based on past experiences, are ready to cut ties with them. My mother wants to see it as unresolved, and we see it as a choice to set our boundaries because we are done with the gaslighting and abusive behavior. We understand that issues that arise are reflections of things we need to internally work on. And we're working every day in our own way and time. But are we running away? This is similar to the first question.
Like the
Right?
first
Are we
question.
running away? Yeah, to let go, or do I act on this? Is it wrong to cut ties with family who are never really there to begin with? Who were never really there to begin with? Is it wrong to cut ties with them? Should I be feeling bad because I'm looking out for the best for my wife and I? We don't wish her ill will, though, or anything. Just looking for some insight into this heavy situation. Thank you again for your service. Much love. That's a tough question, Raghunath. What do you got to say about that?
First and foremost, you're married to your wife.
Okay.
You're not married to your mother. And this mother, she's your mother. She gave you your body. We have some type of responsibility and duty to our
That
parents.
sounds a bit like an anti-mother message here. What's going
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is an anti-Mother's Day message.
Okay.
We have no mothers. They're all my mothers. I've had millions of mothers. No, just kidding. We have some responsibility to our mother. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to invite them to live with us, especially if they don't get along with our spouse. That's just creating more and more chaos. There's ways to love without having a person in your face in your life, unless they they really need you, they're really dependent on you. I don't know the whole situation, so it's hard to say. But you have unless your wife is being really unreasonable as well, but it sounds like you and your wife are on the same page, and your mother's bringing some chaos and some trauma, and she just sort of showed up. I didn't get that part of the question. She just
they moved in with her in this in between period.
Oh, maybe I missed something.
But that being said,
they moved in with her.
They moved in with her temporarily, but I guess that proximity, you brought up all these, and so now he's like, not only do I need to move on to my next home, but maybe I need to move on from this relationship.
Yeah, you have to find, there are certain people, places, and things that are triggers to us that bring us down to low places fast. And we got to make sure that sometimes even family members have to be distance. If ultimately it's not helping me, it doesn't mean we shouldn't sacrifice for people who are in need. But sometimes I have to keep a distance for my own sanity, because there's certain people that will just throw me so off course. I've seen it happen where people go back to their family of origin, and they almost take on this new identity when they get around them. You ever experience anything like that?
Maybe.
Oh yeah, they take up a role that they were when they were 14 years old, or there's some old school dynamic that they become almost different people. And if you're one of those people, you really need to keep a healthy distance.
You're mentioning something now, which you're saying not necessarily cut ties. You're using a different, you're saying keep distance, which may be a slightly different thing, right? In other words, was it Jerry?
Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry. Jerry was saying, I think maybe I'm thinking about cutting ties, and you're talking about keeping a distance, and perhaps those are two different things, right? I remember when we were back in Tuscany, and we did one Q&A session, and you were running off, having to have some COVID test or something like that, and we brought Ganesham Prabhu on, and it was a question about someone whose father was dying, but who had been kind of toxic, and the person was asking, should I make one last effort to kind of reconnect before my father dies, or maybe it's better just not to even stir this whole thing up. And I was interested to hear Ganesham's point of view, because he is a person that he's a pastor, he's a pastor or chaplain that specifically works, with people who are dying and their families. And so he has so much experience to draw from. And I didn't know what he would answer, but I was surprised at how the conviction that he had in his answer. He was like, 100%, go back and try one more time. And he said, because I have so many stories of people that did that and they were so happy that they did, or they're so glad that they made that extra effort. And of course, that's a different thing than Jerry's situation, but I think there's a relation there that, yeah, if this is becoming toxic, if you can't find a way to work this out, as Raghunath say, maybe it is wise to keep some distance. But maybe that's a little different than the idea of cutting ties, like saying, I never want to see you again. And maybe that won't be good for your heart or their heart or for anyone's well-being. Whereas if it's handled more like, this isn't working and we got to create a little distance here. I don't hate you or anything like that, but we're having problems relating right now. So let's, keep a little distance. That leaves the door open for reconnection. Your mother may go through things, or you may go through things.
Sure.
You both may wisen in different ways, and you both may find a way to reconnect. Given a little time.
Special K, when I was, when I moved to the ashram, I have good parents and I have my brothers and sisters, but when I was with them, I was sort of scripted into a persona and I could not break away from that. And so when I went to the ashram, I cut relationships with everybody, including my friends in my band, my scene I hung out with, my family members. I just cut it. But I didn't cut it out forever. Now I can go back and relate to them, but on my terms, not on their terms. My choice of how the dynamic's going to be, and I find it a lot more healthy. And I love my family, and I appreciate them as well. But it's now I'm no longer a 5-year-old, and my older brother's a 9-year-old, and I don't have to.
So
live
it
like
took
that.
some maturing on your part to be able to be with them and be who you are,
Exactly.
rather than be negatively affected by their association.
Boom, booyah.
There we go. Okay,
Thank
so
you, my friend.
maybe that will be helpful for Jerry.
Well, that was great. And guess
I
what?
hope
It's
so.
time. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time to head to Nashville because you're having Kirtan at Yogeshwari's tonight. Really excited. I want to thank everybody who joined us in Atlanta. I want to thank the Facebook people who are here today. Join us on Wisdom of the Sages wherever you get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, you can support us. It's a community-supported podcast. Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. I'm looking at all the people who joined late. Diane from Las Vegas, and Brian Owen, my brother from another mother, and Rich, the pious golfer, Martine H.